So I was recently trying to make my home office, a little bit greener.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, swapping out light bulbs, got myself a bamboo keyboard, the whole bit.
Nice,
And
nice.
it really made me think about like how much potentially there is to make a difference, even with those like small changes.
Right.
And speaking of making a difference, it reminds me of that quote by Robert Swan.
Oh, yeah.
The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it.
That's a good one.
Right? It's so true.
Yeah.
And it kind of sets the stage perfectly for our deep dive today into UQuad's article, How to Lead Green Eye Projects Effectively.
It is a fantastic article.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I have. It's really insightful.
Yeah, I thought so too.
He doesn't just preach about, like, be green. He gives you concrete strategies to actually implement change.
Yeah.
Especially in the IT world, which is great.
Yeah, and he gets really specific too about like aligning project goals with sustainability objectives.
Yes.
It's not just, doing things that feel good. He's talking about measurable results.
Exactly.
Like actually setting targets for things like, reducing energy consumption.
Yeah.
And the amount of e-waste that we generate, which, by the way, e-waste, just for anyone who maybe isn't familiar,
Yeah.
it's basically all the discarded electronics.
Right. Yeah.
From like old phones and laptops.
To entire server racks.
Yeah, to entire server racks. It's huge.
That's huge.
It's a growing environmental problem.
Absolutely. And that's why having those clear, like quantifiable objectives
Yeah,
is so crucial. It's
Yeah.
not just about, like we said, just be green.
right.
It's about making a tangible impact that you can actually track and measure.
You can see it.
You can see it.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that really stood out to me was UQuant's suggestion to kind of learn from the leaders in the field.
Yeah.
And he specifically points to Google
Mm-hmm.
and their renewable energy initiatives
Yeah.
as like a prime example of how to do things right.
Their commitment to 100% renewable energy
Yeah,
for their data centers is pretty remarkable, isn't it?
it is.
But what's really interesting is why they've been so successful.
Okay.
And it's not just about, throwing money at the problem.
Right.
It's about the strategic planning and the long-term vision.
So you're saying this is something that other organizations could actually replicate?
Yeah, definitely. Well, not everyone has, Google's resources.
Of course, right.
The principles are adaptable.
Yeah.
Let's say, you work for a smaller company.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of aiming for 100% renewable energy right away, you start by setting a target of maybe 20%
Okay.
and then gradually increase it over time.
Right.
Or you could focus on implementing like energy efficient technologies.
Yeah.
Switching to LED lighting or optimizing server usage.
Sure.
Small steps can still make a big difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about finding those like practical, achievable solutions.
Right.
No matter your size or your budget.
Yeah, exactly.
And that brings us to another important point that UHOT makes, and that's anticipating challenges.
Oh,
He
absolutely.
talks about the importance of, being proactive and having those contingency plans in place.
It's so important because leading green IT projects,
Yeah.
it's not always smooth sailing.
Yeah.
You're bound to run into roadblocks. And resistance to change is a big one.
Right.
People get used to doing things a certain way. And
Yeah.
any shift towards more sustainable practices can feel disruptive.
Right. And then there's always the issue of budget constraints, too.
Exactly. Resources are often limited,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to new initiatives.
Right.
And that's why, having a plan B and maybe even a plan C
Right.
is essential. What happens if, a key vendor backs out?
Yeah.
Or what if the technology that you are planning to use, becomes obsolete?
Right.
Thinking through those what if scenarios.
I love that you brought that up, those what-if scenarios, because UQuant also really stresses the need for contingency planning.
Yes.
You can't just assume that everything's going to go perfectly.
Exactly.
Now, once you have that plan in place
Right.
and you're ready to kind of tackle those challenges,
Uh-huh.
UQuant's a big believer in getting the whole team on board.
Absolutely. Yeah, he talks about empowering your team,
Yeah.
fostering a sense of ownership and accountability.
Right.
And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
When people feel involved in the decision-making process,
Yeah.
when they understand the why behind the changes you're making, they're much more likely to be, engaged
Right.
and invested in the project's success.
It's not about just telling people what to do.
Exactly.
It's about making them feel like they're part of the solution.
Yes. Yeah.
And he even suggests like rewarding eco-friendly contributions.
Yes.
Which I think is a really smart move.
Absolutely. Recognition goes a long way.
Yeah.
And it ties back to what we were discussing earlier about, setting clear goals and metrics.
Uh-huh.
You can involve your team in defining those metrics, maybe
Okay.
even brainstorm like creative ways to meet them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about something that can be a little bit tricky,
Okay.
and that's finding that sweet spot between efficiency and ecology. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it feels like, you
Yeah.
have to choose one or the other.
Right.
But Yuhuan really argues that you can have both.
He does. He's spot on there.
Yeah.
And he brings up, a crucial tool for achieving this balance, and it's
Okay.
using metrics and KPIs.
Now, by KPIs, you mean key performance indicators.
Exactly.
Things that help you kind of track progress and measure success.
Exactly. It's about getting specific.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, we want to reduce energy consumption.
Mm.
You might track something like, the kilowatt hours of electricity used per server.
Okay.
Or if you're focused on minimizing e-waste, you might measure the percentage reduction in electronic waste year on year. So those concrete numbers help you see what's working, what's not, and how you can constantly improve.
So it's not just about doing things that feel green.
Right.
It's about having the data to back it up.
Exactly.
And I love how Yuhuat ends the article with a section called Actionable Steps You Can Take Today.
Oh, yeah. It's great.
He really wants people to walk away with practical tools
Yes.
that they can put into practice immediately.
It's incredibly helpful.
Yeah, he suggests things like conducting a sustainability audit to identify areas for improvement,
Yeah.
running training sessions for your team on eco-friendly practices,
Yep.
and of course, starting to track those key performance indicators.
Absolutely.
It's a great reminder that sustainability isn't this, far-off concept.
Right.
It's something we can all start working towards today.
It is. What I find most inspiring about his approach is he really reframes the whole conversation around sustainability.
Yeah.
He doesn't see it as like an added burden
Right.
or an extra expense. He sees it as an investment.
In the future.
In the future, exactly.
It's about doing things smarter, not harder.
I like that, yeah.
And, it leaves us with something to think about.
Okay.
His article doesn't really address the ethics of greenwashing.
Mm-hmm.
Where companies make kind of superficial changes that look good on the surface, but don't actually make a difference.
Right, right.
So how do you ensure that your project is truly sustainable
Yeah.
and not just, some kind of marketing ploy?
That's a good question.
Right. That's something for all of us to kind of consider as we strive to make a positive impact on the world.
Absolutely. Food for thought.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was great.
It was fun.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.
Test ERS.